Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Wednesday, the 18th of February, which makes this the news and events for Tuesday, 17th of February, day 1454 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5. Coming to you not from Ukraine today, but rather from the Netherlands, where I am warm and dry and well fed, frankly. How is everybody this evening? Hello, Alex. Hey, Nightshade. Hey, Guard. We were just chatting there. Guard's up there in Norway. Hey, Nicola Jones. Hey, Coffin. Hey, Seawolf. Hey, Anthony Tommy Tom. Good evening, Miss Feisty. How do you do? Thank you, Hart. Hey, Victoria. Hey, Jan. Maddie Wright. How you doing, Maddie Wright? Hey, George. Hey, Alice. Hey, Carl. Hey, John. Hey, Clinkers Kelly. How you doing, buddy? Hey, Stu. Hey, McNally. Mick, I haven't even done the rant video yet. I'm ramping back up. We're ramping back up into normal life here. But I got a rant video coming that is going to amuse many of you. And Mick knows the situation, as does Weibo, but I haven't shared it publicly yet. Hey, Bip. Hey, Truth Hurts. Hey, Gorgeous Gorgeous. Gorgeous George, Illuminated Core. Hey, Lars. Hey, Lars. Lars and Lars. Hey, Carol. Hi in Illinois. Hey, Jackie. Hey, G2. How's everybody doing tonight, huh? I just woke up from a nap. Hey, Drew Moscow. Which I'm a little embarrassed about because I had the alarm set for an hour ago so that I had some time to wake up. And I must have turned it off. It's this stupid Huawei phone. It doesn't snooze and come back on. It's very annoying. Hey, Drew. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the news and events for Tuesday, February 17th, day 1454 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. Hey, Chrissy Locks. Hey, Paul. If anybody sees Little Red, I didn't see Little Red Sunflower come in yet. If anybody sees Little Red Sunflower, she is our sponsor tonight. So please thank Little Red. And if anybody wants to sponsor live, we're taking sponsors. PayPal's in the description. So, you know, even if you didn't know that talks were going to resume, peace talks were going to resume between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine, you would have known when two things happened. Donald Trump said something absolutely deranged and disgusting and dragging the United States through the muck of the wrong side of history. And Russia pounded the shit out of Ukraine last night, as they always do in the hours before peace talks are scheduled to begin, to demonstrate how serious they are about achieving peace in Ukraine. The Russians sent 396 drones last night to absolutely decimate the civilian energy infrastructure around Odessa. DTEC reports that the damage is the worst that they have seen since the start of the full-scale invasion, and that crews are working nonstop to restore power water, and heat. But Odessa was hit very hard last night. Very, very hard last night. Literally hours before the peace talks were supposed to begin. To give you some idea of just how seriously Russia takes these peace talks, Kirill Dmitriev will not be there. Instead, they're sending Medinsky again. So that we've gone from a high-level person of importance inside the Kremlin to a lackey, an absolute bottom-of-the-barrel diplomat who cannot and will not do anything but insult the Ukrainian delegation, and certainly can't make any policy commitments on behalf of the Russian Federation. So it is a joke. These negotiations, these so-called peace, these aren't peace plans. It's a peace scam. Putin isn't interested. He doesn't want it. It's performative. What he wants is the subjugation of the Ukrainian people and all of Ukraine absorbed into his so-called union state. That's what he wants. And he will unalive every Ukrainian that he can to achieve this goal. And he is doing it all right in front of us every day. And it is obscene. It is just obscene. Trump, for his part, yeah, Luke, let's not give up on Ukraine quite yet. Luke is saying something that has come to be a reasonable thing to say. Russia will keep Crimea and the Donbass. Russia's not going to get to keep anything. Let me tell you something. Russia is not going to survive this. They'll survive the war, right? The shooting will stop, and there will still be a Russia that we recognize today. 36 months after the shooting stops, there will not be a Russian Federation that you could recognize today. It's not going to survive. The Russians are not going to survive this. The ruble is finished. The ruble is a dead currency, kid. The kid there is saying that the ruble is finished. And he's right. The ruble is so finished that the Russians, who do not have enough money to fund this war out of the sovereign wealth fund anymore, the way that they have been, they have to float some debt. Right? Like that's what you do when you're a government that's out of money. You float debt. You sell bonds. So the Russians are getting ready to sell bonds. They can't sell them in rubles. They're going to float them in Chinese yuan. Now, how does anybody think that Russia is winning or has a future when the government can't sell its own debt in its own currency? They have to sell the debt in a currency of their masters, of their master state. Because in the China-Russia relationship, make no mistake, Russia is the junior partner. And China, frankly, could end Russia right now, today, just by stopping trade with Russia. Russia is so desperate and so dependent on the Chinese that the Chinese could end Russia just by closing the border. It's just that simple. That is the reality that the Russians are in. Remember, they're into the Chinese for $170 billion in Belt and Road money. Somebody keeps asking, does Trump speak Russian? Have you seen Donald Trump? The guy can barely get along in English. You don't think he speaks foreign languages, do you? Because he was such a good student at school? Get the fuck out of here. No, he doesn't speak Russian. Neither does Putin very well, by the way. But Putin does speak okay English. So the two of them can communicate that way. The two of them can communicate that way. If Trump ever says anything that makes any sense, which he doesn't, I don't know how anybody ever voted for this cunt. All right, so what was it that Trump said that was so stupid and that dragged us all through the muck of the wrong side of history? He once again threatened Ukraine to capitulate, saying that Ukraine must come to the table. Must. Hey, there's Little Red, everybody. Thank Little Red for who is our sponsor tonight. He said that Ukraine must come to the table. They must make a deal quickly. Why? Ukraine is the one that's suffering. It's the only people right now bleeding and suffering and dying in the cause of democracy's sake are the Ukrainians. Nobody should be trying to tell the Ukrainians when it's time to come to the table. The Ukrainians are the ones making the sacrifices. The Ukrainians are the ones who get to decide when they've had enough. Nobody else. And what red lines they refuse to cross. Because I can tell you something, the one effect that this winter bombing campaign has had on the Ukrainian people is that it has steeled their will to never again live under the yoke of Russian oppression. And that is not going to happen. That is not going to happen. Now, interesting. Hang on, sorry, I'm a little dry. The most interesting thing about these talks, which you all know I think are a complete waste of time, because the Russians are not negotiating in good faith. The Russians are not a partner for peace. The Russians are undermining the negotiations even as we speak. Hey, Joe. What did the Russians do last night to undermine the negotiations? They sent 396 drones and 29 missiles. Now, I have to take a moment and point out to everybody that the interception rate, according to the Ukrainian armed forces on the drones, was 369 out of 397. That's a 93% interception rate. The problem, of course, is that it still means that 28 drones got through to their targets. And while no one was unalived last night, to the best of my knowledge at this time, the hits on energy infrastructure in Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa were severe. Tens of thousands were left without power, heat, or water in Odessa last night. DTEC says that it is working with all due alacrity to restore those basic human services to Odessa. Trump, for his part, continues to try to strong arm the Ukrainians into capitulation and surrender to Russia, urging President Zelensky to come to the table and make a deal as quickly as he can. They are desperate to end this war and save the Russian Federation from itself. That's what's at stake here. Putin is right when he says that this is an existential crisis. Only one of the combatants is going to survive. And I'll tell you, it is not a Russian identity that is being forged in the crucible of this war. It is a Ukrainian identity that is being forged in the brutal, tempered steel forge of this war. It was about 36 months after the Berlin Wall fell that the Soviet Union unraveled. We are watching the Russians make the exact same mistakes that the Soviets did at the end of their existence. And it is my opinion that the outcome will be the same. Now, the one interesting thing about these peace talks, these so-called peace talks that are happening, is that they are happening on European soil. The Russians and the Americans have been desperately trying to knock the European voices to the side. And it is the Europeans who have stood in solidarity with the Ukrainians. So it is good to see these talks back on European soil, in Geneva, no less. Geneva, where the convention comes from, or as the Canadians like to call it, the suggestions. The Geneva suggestions. Now, this doesn't mean that the Europeans have a greater voice in what's happening. They are still very much sidelined. However, it is good to see the talks back on European soil where the Ukrainians have access to their support network, to their friends, to the people that are standing by them in this difficult time. Taking a look, so the peace talks are underway again last night, despite last night's massive Russian attack. 397 drones, 93% interception rate, 29 missiles, 86% interception rate. To get 20 KH-101 cruise missiles were fired at Ukraine last night. Every one of those cruise missiles was knocked out of the sky. 4 Iskander-K cruise missiles fired at Ukraine last night. All 4 of them knocked out of the sky. 1 P-59-69 anti-ship missile fired at Ukraine last night, shot out of the sky. 25 out of 29. The 4 missiles that got through, you know what they were. Iskander-M ballistic missiles, or KN-23s. They're practically indistinguishable. Excellent shooting, guy. It's true. Yeah, do the math on that, Anthony. I don't know how many hundreds of millions of dollars last night cost the Russians, but they didn't even unalive anybody. Thank God. I'm not complaining. Thank God. Now, this is a very interesting question. But Evan Skate makes an interesting point here. Since the death of Navalny, is there any resistance left in Russia? So a couple of things. I don't know that Navalny was really that much resistance. I wouldn't call him resistance. He was opposition to Putin. But he was no friend to Ukraine. Let's be clear. He was no friend to Ukraine. Navalny believed that Crimea should be Russian. He supported this war. So you can talk about Navalny as, a hero of the Russian opposition or a reasonable Russian or whatever you want to call him. But he would not have been any help in this situation, by all accounts. I know later in jail he recanted that position, but initially his position was the same as Putin's on Crimea. So the fact is that there was never any real opposition inside of Russia. Did he really, Kansas Steve? He called Ukraine a ham sandwich? What does that even mean? The fucking Russians, they're all like this. They're all megalomaniac nut jobs who think that they have a right to rule the world, just like Trump. So, look, as far as I can tell, Heaven's Gate or whatever your name is, There's no opposition inside of Russia at all that's meaningful. Putin has dispatched, detained. Hold on one second. I just got a warning for something. I don't even know what this warning is for, but I'm being warned. All right, anyway. Did anyone check out the route the Russians had to go to get to Switzerland? No, but I'll bet it was like a corkscrew shape around Europe. Now, DeepSeek here says, but in death, Navalny is helping people see and expose the real Russia. I don't know if he is. The Russians today announced, I think it was Peskov or Lavrov, who referred to the European claim that Navalny had been poisoned using a dart frog toxin. Everybody knows about poisoned dart frogs, right? They live in the Amazon. They're very colorful little amphibians. They themselves are not venomous nor poisonous, but rather they eat a kind of ant that is poisonous, and that poison then is excreted into the moisturizing layer of their skin. It was Peskov who called the accusations absurd. Now, look, I don't know about you, but I don't think there's a lot of poisoned dart frogs hanging out in Siberia. So the fact that the toxin of the poisoned dart frog was found in Navalny's blood, to me, that's just irrefutable evidence that, again, the Russians executed, poisoned this prisoner in custody on the eve of the Munich Security Conference and on the eve of his release, because a release had been negotiated for him. And they murdered him right there. Of course they did, because that's who we're dealing with. So it is interesting to me that the Russian papers on the 2-year anniversary of his death mentioned him not at all, mentioned the poisoning finding of the European Commission not at all. It was not until the day after the anniversary of his death that any of the Russian papers even mentioned Peskov's refusal to acknowledge the European findings, or rather, his rejection of the European findings. Hey, Pugga Mahone. Now, some people are asking questions about Pokrovsk, and Pokrovsk is the next thing that I want to get to. But it's not just Pokrovsk that I want to get to. It's the whole front line. And Ivan says, is Pokrovsk a big deal, a small deal, or no deal? And I wouldn't say that it's any of those things. That's not what's happening here. Pokrovsk was important 2 years ago. Pokrovsk was a major logistics hub for the Ukrainian army in the Donbass 2 years ago. Pokrovsk was the best defended real estate in the Donbass that was holding back the Russian orc horde 2 years ago. None of that is true today. Today, Pokrovsk is gone. It went from being a shining example of what was possible in this war, because Pokrovsk was threatened and evacuated by the Russians early in the war. Then the Ukrainians swept in there, pushed the Russians back, and everybody went home to Pokrovsk. And for a year, people lived a fairly normal life during the war in Pokrovsk until Avdiivka fell. And the Russians began to move forward about 21 months ago onto Pokrovsk. And that was when people had to start leaving again. So the great success story that was Pokrovsk faded over the last 24 months or so. And this is a great example of the fluid nature of the front line. A city that was a critical logistics hub, a city that was a critical bulwark against the enemy, over time lost that status. It had to. The highways that run out of it came under Russian fire control. It could no longer be a logistics hub in those cases. And so logistics were moved back to the rear. It was a bulwark, a defensible point against Russian aggression. But as its loss loomed larger on the stage, what did the Ukrainians do? They built an entirely new defensive line for hundreds of kilometers, about 15 miles back from Pokrovsk. So now you've got tank traps, concertina wire, dragon's teeth, all waiting with fortified positions and gun emplacements to repel the invader attack. That's the world we're living in. The Russians have just gotten through the easy part, the less defended, less defensible lines of Pokrovsk, to now face the fortress belt of the Donbass and the new emplacements that are there to protect Ukraine from them. So, as the Russians stand on the mountain of their own dead, amidst the burning rubble that is Pokrovsk, I guess they're celebrating victory? Oof. Russia is hoping for more American bailouts, and I swear to God, I hope that everybody in this administration that has taken Russian money ends up in jail next to some of these Russian bastards. Everyone in this corrupt administration needs to go down, needs to go to jail or to the gallows in some cases for high treason. You know who I mean. Now, Ivan, is Pokrovsk a big deal, little deal, or no deal? Well, Eli, that's a good question. Eli wants to know, has all of Pokrovsk been lost? Eli, I still don't have an official statement from the Ukrainian armed forces saying that they have withdrawn from Pokrovsk. I haven't seen one, at any rate. What I do have, though, is deep state maps. And deep state maps very clearly shows the area of Pokrovsk north of the railway line to be in Russian hands. And that is effectively all of Pokrovsk. That's the 13 square kilometers. Pokrovsk is only 29 square kilometers. And that is the 13 square kilometers that the Ukrainians had taken back, about 6 weeks ago or so. About 6 weeks ago or so. And Ivan, you're absolutely right. It could be a tactical retreat. Pokrovsk may have served its purpose as much as it could, as a funnel to draw in and grind up the Russian armed forces. We're being told by the Ukrainians that the ratio between Ukrainians and Russians lost in Pokrovsk is 1 to 27. That's an extraordinary loss ratio. Extraordinary. The highest of this conflict. The next highest that I can think of is the Mirnograd agglomeration, right? The town next door to Pokrovsk, with a 1 to 10 loss ratio. Now, Jax is saying here that it isn't fallen, that the Ukrainians are still fighting for it. 2 of the top units have swapped. It has not fallen. Hang on, Bobby, I'm getting to that. See, McNally, I think you're right, and I think Yvonne is right too, that the Ukrainians are still prioritizing preserving the lives of their own men. And so, I don't have an official statement from the Ukrainian armed forces, but I think it's a safe bet that the Ukrainian armed forces determined that if they stayed, they would lose more men. And they made the decision to save those lives and get the fuck out. That's what I think happened. Yeah, Russia has lost a whole generation of men, either to immigration, right? They've left Russia because they don't want to be victims of Putin's senseless war, or because they've actually been lost in Ukraine. And not only that, the guys fighting in Ukraine, the Russians don't want to come home because they do nothing but beat their wives, create disturbances, murder the neighbors, etc. Violent crime inside of Russia is at a 15-year high right now. If things are going so well for the Russians, why on earth is violent crime at a 15-year high? Oh, and by the way, Russia decriminalized domestic violence. Under Putin, it is now legal for you to beat your wife again. So when we say that violent crime is at a 15-year high inside the Russian Federation, please be aware that the most common kind of violence, the violence done against women by men in their own homes, does not count. None of it counts. The biggest sector of violence, domestic violence, is not in those statistics at all because it no longer exists, because it is not a crime inside of Russia. That is not all that the Russians are doing to make life unbearable for the people that live there. I forget how do you pronounce it? Rodomendes, there's a bunch of Z's in there. It's like the Russian Federal Communications Service, right? The FCC in the US. It's the Russian equivalent. They have now set up a hotline where anybody can file an anonymous complaint against any social media platform, any online video, if it is offensive to traditional Russian values. Offensive to traditional Russian values. They have just created a program whereby anybody can launch an investigation into any social media outlet, any online service, with an anonymous complaint that their programming is offensive to traditional Russian values. Now, given the fact that the traditional Russian values that I know are theft, unaliving, and graping, I'm not sure how you get to be offensive to those. My lips are too red. Ooh, Laura, I think you are jealous. You are jealous of my beautiful full lips. Mwah. Get the fuck out of here talking about my lips. Right, Mick. I was at the makeup mirror earlier. Give me a fucking break. Now, even though Pokrovsk is effectively lost, and Jax, you may well be right. There may still be elements of the Ukrainian armed forces inside of Pokrovsk. Maybe I've read the map wrong. But at this time, it does appear that for all intents and purposes, the fight for Pokrovsk is over. And now we're seeing the Ukrainians retrench behind their major fortifications. They're brand new major fortifications, by the way, that were only possible because it took 21 months for the Russians to get. No, I'm wrong. I keep saying 21 months. Avdiivka fell in February of 2024. So it's a full 24 months from Avdiivka to Pokrovsk. 2 years. 2 years. 120,000 Russian lives. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity. Now, the Russians may be pressing forward by pouring 120,000 men into Pokrovsk. But that is not the case around the rest of the front, according to the ISW. In just 5 days last week, the Ukrainians retook 220 square kilometers. The fastest pace of advance among the Ukrainians in over 2.5 years. Fastest pace of advance. The 220 square kilometers in 5 days. The Russians in all of December took 224 square kilometers. In just 5 days of fighting last week, the Ukrainians wiped out all of Russia's advances from the month of December. Huge, huge. Now, down in the Zaporizhia area, where the vast bulk of this territory was retaken around Huliopol, the Ukrainians have wiped out the Russian advances in the area for the last 3 months. Everything that the Russians have taken down there in the last 3 months since the Huliopol offensive began, gone, given back to the Ukrainians. Now, somebody mentioned Starlink in there. The ISW agrees with you. According to the ISW, these gains are not just around Huliopol in the south, but they include gains in Kyiv and the Donetsk region around Chasiv Yar as well. So Chasiv Yar, where the Russians have not been able to make real progress or even capture the town, and again, in about 24 months, now it looks like they're giving up some positions. The fastest rate of advance. So in one place on the front, the Russians are advancing. All up and down the front, the Ukrainians are making gains. What is one to believe from this? And I don't know, right? Like, I don't know that any of this isn't just because of the loss of Starlink. With Starlink out of the picture, with Telegram out of the picture, the Russians don't have a way to coordinate between units. That's going to be an issue. Clearly, that's going to be an issue. You got to be able to coordinate. And we can see the effects the loss of communication are having on the Russian Federation forces. I'm very sorry. Give me 1 second here. I was out in the rain today, and I saw a rainbow A very nice rainbow. Stretching from the Netherlands into Germany. It was really a thing of beauty. It was we were right up on the German border, and there was this magnificent rainbow that stretched right from the Netherlands into Germany, all among the wind farms. It was awesome, Drew. It was totally awesome. With the loss of Starlink, with the loss of this critical communications platform, the Russians are having a hard time with it, and the Ukrainians are exploiting that. There's no doubt about it. How much more the Ukrainians will be able to exploit it is another question. But we will keep our eyes on this over the next couple weeks. I'm not aware of any weapons caches burning in Germany or the Netherlands, which is where I am. Now, on the subject of the Ukrainians and burning Russian weapons stockpiles, Russia was never supposed to. So Mike Kelly wants to know why did Russia lose Starlink? And Russia lost Starlink because they were never supposed to have it in the first place. Russia itself, mainland, internationally recognized borders of Russia, have been geofenced under sanctions packages and have not had Starlink to use at all for 4 years of the war. Almost 3 years, anyway. They bought the terminals through third-party countries like the UAE, Thailand, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, places like that, right? Some third-party shell company buys the Starlink terminal, marks it up 1,000%, sells it to the Russian army. And then they work under these UAE accounts, Kazakh accounts, etc. What the Ukrainians did was supply Elon Musk with a list of all the terminal IDs for Starlink that they had use of. Elon Musk made up what's called a whitelist and said to the computers, hey guys, anybody in this area, Ukraine, with a Starlink terminal, it must be one of these terminals to work. And if it's any other than one of these terminals, a whitelist, don't allow it to work. And boom, just like that, Russia lost Starlink. This has had an effect on their drones because they were mounting Starlink terminals to drones in order to make them unjammable. Well, they're now jammable once again. So electronic warfare is working against them once again. One of the reasons I think that we saw a 93% interception rate last night on the drones. Okay, now, last thing from me today, and then we'll take some questions. In the last 7 days, in the last 7 days, from the 17th back to the 9th, the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces have struck at least 10 critical targets, destroying them. FP2 drones hit a storage location for Iskander tactical missile systems, destroying at least one launcher and damaging 2 more, as well as a stockpile of Iskander missiles. The Rubicon unit, followers of this channel know that the Rubicon unit is the best funded, most deadly Russian drone unit that there is. They are the face of the enemy. The Rubicon unit remote piloting point in the temporarily occupied territory of Zaporizhia was destroyed. There were no survivors. That's good news for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainian Special Operations Forces have struck personnel concentration sites, ammo depots, fuel depots, military vehicle parking lots, where the vehicles just burned on the pavement. Boom, baby, boom, baby, boom, baby, boom. And finally, just last night, a $15 million KA-27 naval helicopter used for hunting marine drones on the Black Sea was destroyed in Crimea. So as difficult as this situation is for the Ukrainians, as hard as it is for them, they are not letting up. They are not letting up at all. And they continue to pound Russian positions as best they can. Okay, that's it for me. Big thanks to Little Red Sunflower, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. I'm looking for sponsors for the rest of the week. If anybody can help me out, that would be great. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Maddie, Travis, and Pete. Thank you all so much. Hello, Francis. Hello, Francis. Questions, comments. Hey, Lola K. What is the status of the Sevastopol port facility? So, I don't know the answer to that, except to say that there's no Black Sea Fleet ships there. The last I saw, there were 2 patrol boats, one of them damaged from an earlier Ukrainian strike. 2 landing ships, both of them not seaworthy from Ukrainian strikes, just rusting away at the pier. And one other ship, I forget the type. And that's it. That's what's there. Everything else has been tucked away over in Georgia, in North Ossetia, and Novorossiysk, and a couple other smaller ports in the Sea of Azov and along the Black Sea coast. So the Black Sea Fleet is no longer in Sevastopol. How was my trip? My trip was great, Eli. Thanks for asking. If you follow me on Facebook, I published the video of us all walking in ahead of the bride. Because I was in the bridal party, I was very flattered and very grateful to be asked, which is, Tom and I know each other for like a long time, since college. And that's a long time now. Hey, Richie Rich. Hey, Parda. Not bad for a country without a navy. You ain't kidding, Little Red. Not bad at all. How close is Mariupol from the main front line? I want to say about 70 miles, about 100 kilometers, I want to say, but I don't know. We can look it up. Does anybody know? Nightshade, do you know off the top of your head? I saw that the Ukrainian Olympic team was let out by a Russian? No. Is that true? That's a crime and a sin if it is. I did see, it wasn't an Olympic athlete. Yeah, the active combat zone is generally located about 100 kilometers to the north and west in Zaporizhia and Donetsk. So about 100 kilometers. Oh, so she's a... Okay, I didn't know anything about it. I did not know anything about it. No, Bobby, I'm in the Netherlands right now. Ukraine hit military site near St. Petersburg. That's good news. We'll probably talk about it tomorrow. So I didn't know anything about that. I did see it was a different. That's what it was. It was like the International Youth Karate. And the world champion is a young Ukrainian woman, right, for her division or her weight class, whatever. A Russian took third place in the competition. She refused to be photographed on the podium with the Russian and walked right out of the photo shoot. And I do not blame her one bit. I think it is appalling that Ukrainian skeleton racer was disqualified from the Olympics because he dared to wear a helmet with the faces of the athletes that the Russians have unalived over the last 4 years. It's wrong. It's wrong. There is we live in a civilization. And if you don't want to be civilized, you don't get the benefits of civilization. In the days of the Olympics, the original days of the Olympics, all wars were stopped so that the Olympics could take place. Russia's trying to freeze Ukrainian grandmothers in their beds. This is not the act of a civilized people. Somebody said Putin is not well. Well, obviously he's not well. He's been dead for 3 years. Boy, I hope, right? So Hungary's elections are coming up. If I'm not mistaken, I want to say it's April 24th. Does that sound right to everybody? The Hungarian elections are coming up in April. It would be so great to see the Hungarians take control of their future and kick Orban out. Ivan is saying Orban is 10 points behind in the polling. The problem is, how much is he going to cheat? Nobody knows who's next in line behind Putin. That is the problem with these authoritarian dictatorships. They don't have a line of succession. The guy in charge keeps dispatching, detaining, or disappearing every competent person who might one day challenge his power. And so when the inevitable happens and the Putin is gone, there will be a power vacuum. And what is likely, given the status of the Russian economy, given the status of Russia in the world, I think what is likely to happen is an orgy of violence, the likes of which the world has not seen in some time. And it is very important that when the Russians are starving to death this time, like they did at the end of the Soviet era, the last time they fucked things up so badly for themselves and others, we don't feed them this time. We cannot let our consciences get the best of us. We have to let them starve. Let them starve. They have shouted their approbation for this war from their rooftops. They have applauded Yevgeny Prigozhin and his band of rapacious, murderous thieves and thugs. They have called for the extermination of the Ukrainian people. The people of Russia cheer when they see Ukrainians freezing to death in their beds. No. Let them starve this time. Drew says Chechnya will be out of there as soon as they can be. Yeah, Chechnya is a great example of a nation state that has been absorbed into the Russian Federation that wants out and that has an active armed resistance group living in the mountains of Dagestan next door, waiting for their moment to take out the Kadyrovs. There is a great big target painted on the backs of Kadyrov's sons, and somebody's going after that soon. Trump is doing everything he can to make Russia great again. There's no two ways about it. Mike, we've been saying that here for 6 months, right? Is that Trump is going to do everything he can to stop the midterms. If it comes down to declaring martial law, which, by the way, will not stop the midterms, that's what he's trying to do. I have, Van. We did see temperatures above freezing for the first time in recent memory, which did cause some flooding in Ukraine, particularly in some of the southeastern trenches and in the Kyiv region. There is some flooding in those trenches. It's a nightmare, right? During the day, it gets a little above freezing, so all this water pours into your trench, and then at night it sinks way below freezing, and it all turns to ice, along with your boots. It's awful. It's absolutely awful. I can't even imagine. So nothing I am saying, am I saying to suggest that the Ukrainians are having an easy time of it. They are not. It's awful. So, Bobby, this trip was planned, right? My buddy, Tommy, who lives in China, was getting married. I was invited to the wedding, and I really wanted to go. And thanks to a bunch of people on here, I was able to go. And I remain so very deeply grateful for that, guys. Thank you. And then my flight, I changed planes. I was supposed to change planes in Amsterdam just by chance. And so I thought, wait a minute, I could get off the plane and go see my buddy Martin, who I haven't seen in a year. Last time I was here was last April for just 3 days. And since then, Martin's bought a house. It's up on a dike, up by the German border. That's where I am. And we're spending some time tooling around the dikes today and stuff. From here, I'm going to Norway. I'm going to spend 2 more weeks in Norway with the hope that by the time that that's over, the weather will be manageable in Kyiv, and I'll be able to return to Kyiv. Right now, my plan is to be back in Kyiv around the end of the first week of March. That's what I'm hoping. Any more videos, Peter? Hogsund? Kentar? I'm not sure where that is, but that's where I'm flying into. Any more videos? You mean like tourist videos, that kind of thing, Maddie? I should. I'll tell you, I couldn't do anything in Amsterdam, guys. I'm sorry. 10 days, 2,000 kilometers in China, 13-hour flight back, some frustration with KLM and Air France. I spent the 2 days that I was in Amsterdam in the hotel, just sleeping and eating, taking massive doses of vitamin C, trying not to get sick again. I was exhausted, and I couldn't do a single video from Amsterdam. But we'll see, Maddie, if I can get out. I did not get to the Forbidden City, Bobby. Bobby, listen, my buddy's bride has a lot of pride in the People's Republic of China, her home country, right? And she had a schedule planned for us from morning to night, every single day. We were nonstop for 10 days, brother. Yeah, God bless her. God bless her. They did not make me do a propaganda video in Amsterdam. That would be great. That would be great if I could do a propaganda video in Amsterdam. I would love to do Dutch propaganda. I would love to do Dutch propaganda. It's tulip time. I would love to do Dutch propaganda. That would be so great. Okay, so again, big thanks to Little Red, who is the sponsor of this video. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group, and of course to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. I did not get to the Great Wall, Bobby. I did not get to the Great Wall. That is, it's not a regret. I don't regret it. I did the right thing. I stuck with my buddy and his wife and did what they wanted to do. But no, we did not get to the Great Wall. That to me is just incentive to go back. That to me is just incentive to go back. Didn't get to the Forbidden City, no. We did get to the ancient city of Pingyao, which I do recommend as anybody who's going to be a tourist in China. The ancient city of Pingyao is certainly a place to visit. I can show you. The place is, one of the things about the place, it's the home of the modern Chinese banking system. And it's also the home of China's vinegar production. They are famous for their vinegar. And so I have a little Chinese health vinegar here, which I think is basically an apple cider vinegar that you are encouraged to drink. And in fact, even Hippocrates lauded the merits of drinking apple cider vinegar for health. So I do have to consume that. I am not happy to be out of Ukraine. I do not want to be out of Ukraine. This trip, in its current form, was planned for months. It just happened to come at a time where it was most advantageous to be out of Ukraine. Now, this diversion to Norway is because of the current situation. And I am not happy about it at all. I mean, I'm happy to be going to see my good buddy Arn and meet him and the wife in person for the first time. I'm very much looking forward to that. And I'm very grateful that they're willing to take me in. But would I rather be in Ukraine? I would be. I would be. And I have very mixed feelings about the whole thing. Look, I got very sick spending 26 days in my apartment without any heat. I'm no good to anybody if I'm down with pneumonia. I'm no good to anybody. To any of you, to the Ukrainians, nobody. So rushing back into this is not a good idea. I had 3 people from Kyiv last week urge me not to return too soon, to stay away until it warms up. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay. It's a catastrophe. Kyiv is a catastrophe, Chrissy. How is Russia getting all their weapons into Ukraine? They're firing them. I mean, I don't even know what that means. How are they getting their weapons into Ukraine? They put the drones on a launch rail and they launch them. That's what you do with drones. Then they go where you program them to go and blow it up. Same with the missiles. They got a Scander launch site set up all along the Ukrainian border. And of course, the Air Force launches a lot of these missiles too. Yeah, we've talked about the human safari in Kherson quite a bit here. It is worth pointing out that that safari is now being extended to Zaporizhia city. So they're no longer just hunting humans in Kherson. They're hunting them in Zaporizhia as well. Okay, guys, listen, I could really use some live sponsors this week. That would be great if anybody can do that. Big thanks to Little Red, who was the sponsor of tonight's live. Big thanks to Lars with the Discord server, Nightshade with the Peters Peeps group, and of course to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Maddie, Petey, and Travis. I feel like I wanted to say something else. I guess not. I guess thanks everybody for hanging out. Have a great evening and a pleasant tomorrow. Thanks. Drew, I don't know that anybody needs to join Discord. I've had it installed before and I've uninstalled it because it is a pig on resources. It just takes over everything. So I don't know that anybody needs to be on Discord, but some people like it. Lars likes it. And so he supports an environment for people that are interested in communicating that way. I do not recommend it. I don't particularly support it, but I want to acknowledge Lars's effort and know and let people who are interested in that kind of thing know that it is available to them. But really, it's a, and Lars and I have had this conversation. He knows I feel this way about it. It's like Telegram. It's a necessary evil. I don't want to be on Telegram. I don't recommend anybody be on Telegram. But if you're in Eastern Europe, you kind of have to be, or you do not get invited to any parties. It's just that simple. Anyway, thanks everybody. Also, you know, I have the Patreon, which has been badly neglected during my vacation. I was not on Patreon at all. If you follow this channel and you appreciate the information you get here, and you can kick me $5 a month, please join the Patreon. Join the Patreon. There's lots of, hey, Ted, there's lots of videos there that are published only there, and you will not see them anywhere else. And as soon as I can get someplace where I have a desktop that I can use, there will be more published. There will be more things published there. I can't do it with just the app. The app only, it gives you 1-minute videos. It's all you can do with the app. It's very limiting. So I need to be on a desktop and I need to be on a web interface to do much of anything on Patreon. But the Patreon is how I survive. So if anybody can join the Patreon and help me survive here and keep doing this, I certainly appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Have a good evening, everybody, and a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.